Hey everybody, it's your friend James Shaw. Thank you so much for choosing to tune in and hang out with us. We're doing what we do, which is talk to elite people who are doing elite things. And I'm pumped to have my friend Dawn on today because she's got something really cool coming out. Dawn, you're an author. You've got a book coming out. You're going to change lives through your story. But would you introduce yourself to everyone? Tell us who you are and where you are and a little bit about you.
I am so excited to be here. It is truly an honor, James, to be a part of your community, your world. You're doing fascinating things. So, yes, I am Dawn Cazedessus. Currently, I am the regional director for KW for the Southeast region. I should say, honestly, do it correctly, the award winning Southeast region here in Atlanta, Georgia, and very excited about finally checking off a big bucket list item and writing my book, Trailer Park CEO, which is coming out this fall.
We're so proud of you and honored that you've come on to share because you've learned some amazing lessons. I mean, first of all, the title grabbed your attention, Trailer Park CEO. Sounds like you've had a journey in life. So tell us a little bit about some of the stuff we're going to learn in this book.
Yeah, because we're in the real estate industry, James, so often people think when they hear my title, they're like, Dawn, do you own trailer parks? So, like, no, I actually came from the trailer park. And so the book is actually, it is my journey. It's my journey from the trailer park to the C suite. And ultimately, it's a message of hope that really good things can come out of trailer parks. And it's all the lessons that I did learn along my journey to allow me to become who I am today.
You've done a lot of stuff. I mean, you joined Keller Williams, what, 17 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah, this month I'm celebrating 17 years.
Congratulations.
Thank
Productivity
you.
coach. You were, when I first met you, you're regional director of Gulf States region.
Yeah, yeah.
And now regional director of the, as you said, the award-winning Southeast region. You've been a blessing to so many people, but helped them build amazing businesses and amazing lives through some of these lessons. So
Yeah.
let's walk through some of them. I think it's what, 12 lessons, but really 13?
Yes, because, well, there's 12 stones, is what I like to call them in the book. There's 12 stones, and they're things that a lot of your listeners have heard before. I just put a little bit of my story behind it with a little bit of more of a practical spin, tactical ways to implement those stones. And the reason there's a 13th stone is because I am from South Louisiana. And in Louisiana, we have a term, it's called lagniappe. And lagniappe means just a little extra. Or you might think of it as like the baker's dozen. And when I was finishing up the book and was walking through the 12 stones, I was like, oh, I missed one that is super important. And honestly, I've benefited from my entire life. And it's the stone of generosity. And so we decided to add a lanyard stone and call that one generosity. And it's the last stone in the book, and it's appropriately last because it is why we do everything. It is what we do with the fruits of the things that we've earned when we apply these stones in our lives.
That's great. Well, you are one of the most generous people I've ever met. So
Oh,
it's,
thank
it's
you.
a, it's a true one for you. I want to hear about your story. So you grew up in Louisiana. You grew up in a trailer park. Tell me about, just give me the overview of what your journey was like, because now you're running literally probably the most elite region in Keller Williams. So
Yeah.
tell me about this journey and the path that you've been on.
Yeah, if you would have told me I'd end up where I am, James, I wouldn't have believed it because it didn't make sense. Matter of fact, it doesn't make sense knowing what I came from. And so, yes, I grew up in a small trailer park in South Louisiana, in a town called Bush, Louisiana, and everyone in my family was trailer park people. We just didn't go to college. We didn't do the things that that would land the reasoning of why I would be here today. And yet I was the first to venture out of my home to go to college, got a degree, a major in biology and a minor in chemistry, wanting to be that pre-med student. And obviously God took me on a different path. He was like, yeah, we're not going to send you to med school. We're going to make you a drug dealer. And so I became a drug dealer first. And that just meant that I was a legalized drug dealer. I was working for Merck Pharmaceuticals as a pharmaceutical rep. That was my first big girl job in corporate America.
That is just amazing. So how does one go from that to that?
Yeah. Well, James, your young listeners are not going to know what this is but you and I know what this is. It was the good old newspaper days. They had an ad in the newspaper that was a job advertisement. And really, the reason I even went and searched for a job advertisement in the paper is because as I was applying to med school, I recognized that there was something that happens when you go to med school is that you can't work. If you know anything about doctors, they work lots of jobs. I mean, they can't work jobs to pay for med school. They actually get lots of debt. And so I did not want that debt. And so fear actually led for me to go and research that position. And when I did that, I was like, well, let me just go and become a pharmaceutical rep and save up money. Well, as I went through that journey and went through that corporate ladder and learning, I woke up one day and was like, this is not really what I wanted to do either. And so that led me to become finally a small business owner. And that led me to open up my first coffee shop. And so after I survived Y2K, I decided to open a coffee shop in August of 2000. A year and a half later, I opened up my second location. And then in 2004, wrote my own franchise agreement and sold my first franchise.
Wow.
Went on to sell 7 franchises of my coffee shop. Now, not knowing any of the business things that I know today. It was literally, and this was pre-Google days. You couldn't go on Chat GPT and ask for a business plan. This was going to the library and studying and honestly researching of how to have a successful business. And so grew it to 7 franchises, very successful coffee shop, and decided to sell it in 2007 to be a stay-at-home mom. And it was the first time I ever had any money in my life. And I knew if I did anything like my family did, it would be gone because I didn't have financial literacy. I didn't know what to do with that. And so I picked up the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that made me start thinking differently. And then I picked up the second book, which was The Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Okay.
Not the red book, the blue book, book. And that blue book changed my world, because that taught me how to invest in real estate. So it was 2008. We all know what was happening in 2008.
Yeah.
And so I bought my first investment property. I actually took advantage of the market. There was foreclosures. And so an opportunity presented itself, bought my first investment property. After that closing, I recognized that maybe it'd be better for me to get my license so that I could apply all those commissions to future investments. And that's where the journey really started. I will say that's when my life really took a pivotal stand. Because I woke up and I was like, there's just a whole nother world out there. All the things that I thought I knew, I realized that I didn't even touch the surface of what I could know. And and so honestly, stepping into Keller Williams was the biggest life-changing movement for me, because I was able to get into learning, get into dialogue with people who were thinking bigger. And that led to me becoming a productivity coach, starting my own mega team, and then also becoming a team leader out of a market center, and then regional director of 2 regions.
The journey has been quite amazing. It seems like that really experience was one of the best teachers for you. Just being willing to give something a try and see what happens. And maybe that's a lesson someone can learn from you.
Yeah, well, I write about it in the book, is that I learned how to fail forward very quickly, because when you didn't have all the resources and the things at your fingertips, you had to fail your way to success for sure. And I am so grateful that I was able to read books like John Maxwell's Failing Forward and other good books that I saw patterns that successful people failed. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, if successful people fail, that gives me the opportunity to fail my way to success. And that's really what I did. So I learned through experiences for sure.
Tell me a little bit more about failure then, because you've kind of attached this acronym to it, which I think is pretty cool. And it is something that holds a lot of people back in this business. They're afraid to step out and do something because of failure, even if it's calling someone they know and just checking in on them. They're worried about some rejection, or trying a new strategy, or knocking on a door, or whatever. I mean, it can be so simple, and yet this fear of failure can hold us back. How do you frame it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's about reframing it, is exactly what you're saying. It's reframing the idea of failure, right? And so when I was looking at how did I reframe it, I started saying, well, first I have to forgive myself. because it's sometimes it's easy to forgive others, and sometimes we have situations in our life that is difficult. Yet I had to forgive myself first. I had to say, you know what, I didn't it wasn't there was no ill intent in this failure. It was literally me trying to figure things out. So forgive yourself, Dawn, right, for making those mistakes, or doing what you did. And then I had to learn how to accept it, right? So the A in fail, using the acronym here, A just says just accept it. It is what it is. It is what it is, right? And then I taught me that I had to inspect it though. If I didn't want to repeat the same things over and over again, then I had to inspect it so that I could change the pattern, which then leads to the L, which is learning about it. So, what did I learn from this situation? How do I apply it into my life? And how do I do things differently that will be better for me? So, fail is forgive, accept, inspect, and learn.
We all have these experiences from the past, mistakes we've made, things we wish we would have done differently, that I feel like, Don, so many people hold on to. And that if we can, I don't know, like you say, accept them, inspect them, and learn from them, we can kind of let that go. It seems like, you were somebody that broke the mold for what your family was like, that this was who we are and where we lived and what we were about. And not that that's wrong, it's just what the family was. And you wanted to change that. That takes
Mhm.
courage.
Yeah, it took courage, but you know what the courage really stood for me? It was overcoming shame, right? When you sometimes grow up in these environments and you step out, you have this shame cloak on you. And I had to release that. I had to get rid of the shame behind it. And I had to become more vulnerable. And I'm grateful for Brene Brown's work in vulnerability and shame. And so I had to become more vulnerable so that I could be more authentic. I just want to be me. And I recognized when I could be me, there was better opportunity than if I tried to be someone else.
How do you advise then someone who is struggling with that, that feels like that they're not living in authenticity, that they're not embracing who they really are, but does have some fear of branching out toward that direction? What would you tell them?
Yeah. So in my book, I talk about this a lot because we all have heard that we're the average of the five people that we hang out. Well, when I first heard that, I was like, ooh, that's kind of scary. And then I started evaluating those things and I recognized that I needed to invite other people in my life that was thinking differently than how I was thinking, but also how my family was thinking and how I grew up. And so for me, I started implementing coaches in my life. Very important. Like I am who I am today because of powerful coaches that I have invited into my life. And then I started inviting mentors, people that I could roll by, like I could look at and say, how did they did these things right? Would that serve me well? And then I started looking at peers. I started saying, who am I hanging out with? Who do I surround myself with? How do they think? Does it encourage me to think differently and positively about my life? So those people really started to have an impact in my life and have shaped me into who I am, that allowed for me to overcome what we call stinking thinking.
We got to hang out with the right people. That's why I always
Yeah.
talk about, we do that call every morning, and I'm like begging people to get on the call because I don't know how you can't get on our call every morning and then have some sort of outlook of possibility or opportunity about the market when the call is over, because we're just hanging out with people that are talking about stuff like that. You've always been this possibility, opportunity, I don't know, positive person. The time I've known you, I mean, we met
Mhm.
the year that Louisiana had, I don't remember how many, was three or four hurricanes, five hurricanes came through Louisiana that year when you were a regional director, and I was working in a South Florida region at the time, and on all these calls together and doing stuff, and watching you lead through that was really amazing, when there was so much devastation and yet you saw hope and opportunity and a willingness to help. That's a mindset I imagine you developed, and I'm curious about how you did that.
Yeah, so I talk about that in my book as well, James. The word is optimism. And a lot of times people say optimism is a glass half full. So then we say people who aren't optimistic are glass half empty type people. And I really started processing that and I was like, I need to reframe it. And I need to reframe it in such a way that optimism is hope at all times. And when I looked at it, I said, well, I redefined optimism as a glass that is overflowing, which means that I've got to constantly be charging myself, constantly pouring good things into myself so that my glass is overflowing so that I can sometimes lend it my optimism to other people. And that came out during those hurricanes, right? That season of 5 major hurricanes that hit the Gulf States region that I had to navigate. There was a lot of people that were going through some really terrible things. And I needed to loan them some optimism that the future was going to be good and that there was hope in there. And so if I can wake up every day with a glass that's overflowing, it prepares me for whatever life hits us with. Because here's what I also say in the book: life will happen. We all have the t-shirt. We just have to be prepared for it.
All right. So but if your glass is empty, now you're looking at your glass, you're
Hmm.
like, this things are really hard right now. And there are agents watching this that their
Yes.
life is tough and their business is not anywhere in the neighborhood of where they thought it would be. And to go from this idea of my glass is empty to a glass is overflowing. Like, how does one do that?
Yeah. So I call it is a mind shift. Now, a lot of people like to use mind hacks, James. They'll go, I call it the TikTok world of life hacks, right? They'll try to these mind hacks. Well, we know that mind hacks don't last very long. Mind shift says that I have to literally shift my whole way of thinking. I have to move it over. I have to completely change it. And so for me, it's what I love what you just said that you guys do every single morning is that you get with like-minded people to know what truth is. What are the facts, right? And I also, in doing a mind shift, a wise person once told me, don't base your actions on someone else's reactions, right? And so in order to get your glass filled, you've got to start getting into truth, into facts, and into action. And your action cannot be based on what other people's reactions are so that you can then begin to fill it. And then once you've experienced the glass that's overflowing, it is an ongoing, like every day I wake up of like, how do I make sure it never gets depleted? How do I make sure that I'm always doing the mind shifting that needs to happen no matter what's happening in the world, the market, or in my business, or within my just in my life, right? How do I overcome those things for that?
It seems like community really does matter in a spot like that. And I have found, I'm sure you've seen it too, that when things get tough, people tend to isolate, they withdraw, they pull back.
Mhm.
And I would see it as a team leader. We would have someone that came to every team meeting we did and was very involved. And then all of a sudden they kind of quit showing up. And then you check on them, they didn't call you back. And then you'd find out, hey, they've left and they've gone somewhere else or they're getting out
Mm.
of business completely because something's happened. I mean, we'd see stuff like that. So when you're going through challenging times, what I'm hearing you say is don't pull back, don't withdraw, but go get with other people who are maybe even a little bit ahead of you or have experienced what you've experienced before and can help, pull you through. And if you're hanging out with people whose cup is overflowing and you're next to them, yours fills up, right?
It does, James. And as leaders, we have to seek out, we have to ask for help. And this is where most people, like you said, they go into isolation, or I would like to say they've got it wrong. They think like, I'm gonna grit it out. And I talk about grit in my book, but I'm just gonna isolate. I'm gonna see if I can figure this out on my own. And the reality is that sometimes when we are depleted, we can't think of the new ideas. We can't think
Mhm.
of the things because our brain is just not where it needs to be. When I get next to people who are thinking bigger and differently and their cup is overflowing, I get to borrow that. In order for me to borrow it, though, I have to acknowledge it, right? I have to go and say, I'm empty and I need filling up. And I don't even know what questions to ask right now, but I need to sit at your feet because there's some things that I need to learn and I need to recharge by listening. So that's why community is important. And that is why, as leaders, we have to recognize the seasons that we're in. No season ever lasts forever, right? And so that in order for us to get out of that, we have to go and find that community and sit at the feet of those whose cup is overflowing so that we can fill up ours.
And ask them a lot of questions, learn from them, be willing to adapt.
Yes, yes.
All right. So the book comes out September 2nd. Is that right?
Second. That's
Yeah.
right. September
So
2nd.
all right, so tell us how we can find it, how we can connect to it, how we can get with you on it, and learn more from you, Dawn.
Yeah. Well, the best place to go is the website, the trailerparkceobook.com. So the trailer park, I'm sorry, trailer park book. I can't speak. Trailerparkceobook.com. Trailer Park Book, trailerparkceobook.com. Sorry, there we go, got it. And that's the best place to go, because that way it'll allow for them to see for single orders or for bulk orders if people want to do small groups. It's a great book for small groups with questions. We have a digital journal that your people are going to get also, that'll lead them through either a self-guided or small group discussions, so that they can start building their community. My desire for this book is to bring awareness to leaders of how to build that community, how to navigate the things that we have to navigate as leaders, right? And so we have a lot of digital assets to go along with that book to guide people in their reading.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us in here. Congratulations on the book, and it's just great to have you on. I've got a lot of respect for you. I appreciate you very much. So, Dawn, thank you. Be well.
Thank you. An honor to be here.